In this video, we will delve into the events of 2013 in the English city of Oxford, where 17-year-old Jayden Parkinson disappeared after leaving the hostel she resided in. Law enforcement initiated an immediate search upon receiving the missing persons report. As the investigation unfolded, authorities encountered a unique set of circumstances previously unprecedented in the UK. Jayden Parkinson was born in Folkestone, UK, on September 26, 1996. She was the youngest among 3 siblings in the family. Jayden's parents had a less than ideal relationship. According to her mother, Samantha Shrewsbury, Jayden and her siblings witnessed many unpleasant things. Jayden's parents divorced when she was 7 years old, and although she stayed with her father, she maintained a close relationship with her mother. They lived in different locations but communicated regularly over the phone every night. As a teenager, her lifestyle became somewhat chaotic. According to Samantha, Jayden's father permitted her to have a free rein. She got involved with a group where she started smoking and consuming alcohol. Her living situation alternated between her father and mother. At the age of 13, she ran away from home and approached her mother, expressing her desire to live with her. Eventually, the family court granted permission for Jayden to stay with her mother. She had conflicts with several individuals at school, including teachers. She was displeased with someone attempting to dictate her actions. In terms of her personal life, she was romantically involved with Ben Blakely. Jayden was only 14 when she crossed paths with former bin man Blakely. They did not reside together as she was still a minor, but persistently, like a dripping tap, he influenced her and eventually transformed her entirely. Jayden began dating Ben when she was 15 years old, while he was 20 years old at the time. Undoubtedly, the 5-year age difference concerned Jason's mother, but she felt powerless as her daughter fell in love. Initially, their relationship was filled with tenderness and romance. However, over time, everything changed. The once mutual understanding disappeared, and their relationship became strained. Ben began to control every aspect of Jayden's life. She stopped wearing makeup and became increasingly isolated. Ben even dictated what clothes she could wear, causing Jayden to drift apart from her family and friends. Consequently, Jayden left her mother's house and sought refuge in a women's shelter for survivors of domestic violence. Even though Ben was prohibited from coming to this hostel, it didn't prevent him from completely controlling her entire life. They often argued, and Jayden even warned the hostel staff that Ben was aggressive towards her. She couldn't do anything without his permission. He took her mobile phone, convincing her that all she needed in the world was him and his love and care. Ben forbade her from talking to other men and controlled all her social media. She stopped attending school, and Ben's level of control was so high that he even forbade her from leaving her room to go to the toilet. Jayden used to talk to her mother on the phone every day, but now their communication has been reduced to 1 or 2 conversations per month. Samantha asked her daughter to return home and end her relationship with Ben, but the persuasion did not work. Ben controlled Jayden both psychologically and physically, and she was seen several times with bruises on her face. On November 30, 2013, Jayden called her mother and informed her that she was pregnant. She hoped that the child would force Ben to change his attitude towards her and his lifestyle in general. She believed the baby would strengthen their relationship, and Ben would become the way he was when they first met. But he didn't live up to her expectations, as often happens in such cases. Ben stopped his good boy act when he established complete control over Jayden. She fell into a trap, making her drift apart from her friends and family, depending only on him. Jayden didn't have her own money, and it got to the point where he forbade her to leave her room, even if she needed to use the toilet. Behind her back, Ben dated other girls whom he also controlled psychologically and physically. When Samantha learned about her daughter's pregnancy, she again asked her to return home. Yet Jayden refused, and they met to discuss it, but Jayden was adamant. The girl didn't want to cause her mother any more trouble. When Jayden informed Ben of her pregnancy, he became furious and claimed that he was not the father of her child. He even threatened Jayden to post her naked photos and videos on social media. A few days before Jayden disappeared, she reported Ben to the police because she was afraid he would post her naked pictures and videos. Ben had about 30 photos and 13 videos featuring Jayden, and she didn't want them to be publicly available. On December 3rd, Jayden did not return to the hostel for the night, and the staff was aware of the problems in her personal life. The staff tried to find her. They contacted Samantha by phone, but she did not know where her daughter might be. Just after midnight on December 4th, 2013, the police received a missing persons report. Having learned about Jayden's problems in her personal life, investigators tried to contact Ben to find out if he knew anything about her disappearance. He was very aggressive and hung up the phone several times, saying he couldn't help and didn't know where Jayden might be. Jayden had a difficult childhood, and she periodically quarreled with her family. She ran away from home several times but then returned. Therefore, her disappearance didn't seem unusual in the first hours of the investigation. On the same day, December 4th, the police arrested Ben Blakely. They took him to the police station, and it was not related to Jayden's disappearance. A few days before, Jayden reported Ben to the police because she was afraid he would post her intimate photos on the internet. The investigators who spoke with him did not know the police were looking for Ben as a person of interest in the Jayden Parkinson disappearance case. He denied his intentions to post images of Jayden on the internet and was released on bail the same day. Samantha was distributing flyers with her daughter's picture. She also used social media to draw attention to the case, hoping that someone had seen something or might know where Jayden might be. Meanwhile, the police checked surveillance cameras to discover her last known location. They obtained CCTV footage from the hostel Jayden lived in. The footage shows her leaving to meet Ben but never returning. It was on December 3rd. The next place where Jayden was spotted was Oxford railway station. CCTV footage shows her walking inside with Ben, and nothing unusual is happening in the video. After tracing their journey, investigators learned that Ben and Jayden boarded a train to the town of Didcot, about 10 miles from Oxford. The last known location of Jayden was the train station in Didcot. The footage showed her and Ben leaving the building. Usually, when Jayden ran away from home, she would contact someone from her family over the next day or two and say that she was okay. But this time, everything was different. Days passed, but Jayden did not call her family or friends or appear on her social networks. Since the CCTV footage showed her boarding a train with Ben, he became the prime suspect in her disappearance. The police did not doubt that Ben knew where Jayden was and what had happened to her. The footage showed Ben returning to the train station alone, yet no one saw Jayden alive ever again. A week later, on December 10, 2013, the police arrested Ben Blakely. Investigators wanted to talk to him and figure out where Jayden went after they left the train station building in Didcot together. At that time, the police did not rule out the possibility that Jayden was hiding there, and there was also the possibility that Ben was holding her against her will somewhere. During the interrogation, Ben behaved very confidently. He stated that he did not know where his ex-girlfriend was. Ben referred to Jayden as his ex-girlfriend. According to him, he and Jayden had broken up, and she had another boyfriend. Ben said that's who the police needed to talk to. He also said he didn't care where she was or what happened to her because they broke up, and now he had a new girlfriend. He advised the police to access her social media to check her location and who she was meeting with. Although Jayden was still missing, Ben Blakely was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and taking her life. The police interviewed Jayden's friends to learn if she could have gone somewhere. But all the investigators discovered was that Jayden became estranged from her friends after she started dating Ben. Therefore, no one knew if she had a place where she could hide. During the ongoing search for Jayden, investigators received crucial information from a taxi driver in Didcot. He said that at about 1 a.m. on December 4th, he picked up a passenger on a dirt road. He described him as a young man with a large and heavy suitcase smeared with mud. He couldn't lift it and asked the taxi driver to help him. All the circumstances made the taxi driver think about what was in the suitcase and that he could have witnessed the crime. Investigators determined that the person who called the taxi used Ben Blakely's mobile phone. When the police questioned Ben again, he stated he would not answer any more questions. After analyzing the location records of his mobile phone, the police learned that Ben had been to several places in Didcot, and one of those places was an abandoned barn in the countryside where a taxi picked him up that night. A team of investigators, criminologists, and dog handlers went there to investigate. It also became known that Ben and Jayden had been there before because her mother lived in Didcot, next to the barn. The police found a bracelet similar to the one Jayden was wearing. Service dogs trained to search for dead bodies started barking inside the barn, but Jayden's body wasn't there, and it probably had something to do with the suitcase Ben was with when getting into the taxi. The police asked the public for help, urging everyone who saw a man carrying a large suitcase in the Didcot countryside to report it. At the same time, the police went door to door and interviewed residents of the houses closest to the abandoned barn. The video from the train station shows that Ben and Jayden did not have a suitcase with them. Therefore, the investigators wanted to find out where Ben got this suitcase. But what if the man described by the taxi driver wasn't Ben? The police found the answer to this question on December 14th. Investigators discovered that Ben Blakely's grandmother, grandfather, and younger brother Jake lived near the abandoned barn. The first thing Ben's grandmother asked when the police knocked on her door was, "Are you here about the suitcase?" She said there was a suitcase that Ben had taken from her a few days ago. He came in a hurry and said he needed a suitcase, dumping its contents on the floor without explaining anything. According to Ben's grandmother, he returned it 2 days later and threw it in the barn. However, now it was dirty. She also mentioned 2 missing shovels that later reappeared in their place again. The shovels were also covered with a thick layer of dirt. Why would Ben need 2 shovels? Perhaps the man didn't act alone. 17-year-old Jake Blakely was a friend of Jayden. She met Ben through him. Witnesses said they saw Ben and Jake riding dirt bikes together. When the police started searching for Jayden, they arrested Jake Blakely on suspicion of complicity in the crime. They sent the suitcase Ben returned to his grandmother's barn to the laboratory for analysis. The police needed to know if Jayden's DNA was on it. Based on all the available evidence, investigators came up with a version that Jayden was deprived of her life in an abandoned barn. After some time, she was placed in a suitcase and transported to another place where the perpetrator buried her. But given the vast area of the fields that surrounded Didcot, finding Jayden's body seemed like a difficult task. The police involved aviation in the investigation to determine the approximate place of Jayden's burial. Thanks to aerial photography, they identified 10 places where a significant change in the soil surface had recently occurred. The police checked several locations, but it did not bring results. They couldn't find Jayden's body before the police checked all 10 places of interest in the investigation. There was another breakthrough in the case. Jake Blakely started cooperating with the police, telling them to check his uncle's grave at a local cemetery. The cemetery next to the All Saints Church in Didcot was one of the 10 places where the surface had changed recently, but the cemetery was the last on this list, as there is nothing unusual in a soil surface change in such places. The police cordoned off the cemetery after investigators received a note from Jake Blakely, in which he said that Jayden's body might be in his uncle's grave. Detectives had never seen such a way to hide a victim's body. According to information from the English press, Ben and Jake's uncle was buried in 2006. The new circumstances of this case attracted widespread media attention. It was the first crime in the country where the victim's body was in an already existing grave. Having set up a tent in the cemetery, forensic experts began their work. After some time, Jayden's family received the worst possible news. The police found her body in the grave of Ben and Jake Blakely's uncle. She was naked, and the police couldn't find her clothes. She also had all her jewelry removed. The forensic examination established that someone had beaten Jayden before her death. Finger marks on her neck indicated strangulation. The pathologist named asphyxia as the official cause of her death. While awaiting trial in prison, Ben Blakely changed his behavior strategy. After speaking with the prison chaplain, he and his lawyer wrote a letter stating that he was responsible for Jayden's death. However, Ben claimed that the crime was not premeditated. According to him, he pushed Jayden during an argument, and she fell off a bridge located near an abandoned barn. He tried to bring her to her senses but couldn't do it. At first, he buried Jayden's body in one place, but then moved it to the cemetery and buried it in his uncle's grave. However, the autopsy didn't show any signs of such a fall. There were blunt force injuries on her face. As mentioned before, the cause of her death was asphyxia, indicating that Ben Blakely was lying to absolve himself of some responsibility for what happened. Jayden's father died due to heart problems before the trial even began. On June 23, 2014, Blakely appeared in court, and it became evident to everyone that this man had no remorse for what he had done. He behaved provocatively and shouted insults, making it clear that he was indifferent to the fact that he had taken the life of Jayden and her unborn child. During the 4-week trial, it was revealed that Ben Blakely, of Reading Berks, was a violent and controlling boyfriend. 3 of Blakely's previous girlfriends testified that he was controlling and violent in their relationships. The jury heard that he would take their phones, physically assault them, and grab them by the throat if they answered back or if he suspected infidelity. Blakely's short temper was evident during the trial, and he was warned multiple times by the judge about his outbursts in the dock and on the witness stand, where he repeatedly swore and shouted at the prosecutor, Richard Latham. His rages were distressing for Jayden's mother and other family members, who were sometimes forced to leave the courtroom in tears. Judge Patrick Eccles, at one point, sent Ben down to the cells and continued the trial in his absence for a day. Despite Jake Blakely being under 18, Judge Eccles lifted the usual ban on reporting a juvenile's name because he deemed it in the public interest to do so. Jake pleaded guilty to perverting the course of justice, claiming he thought he was burying weapons or dead animals at the time. Ben had promised his teenage sibling an Xbox games console and £100 for carrying out the evil deed, as revealed during the trial. CCTV footage presented to the jury depicted Ben and Jayden entering the train station in Oxford and boarding a train to Didcot. The footage also captured Blakely returning alone, attempting to hide his face. The prosecutor argued that it was a premeditated crime, asserting that Blakely intentionally lured Jayden to a secluded place to take her life. There seemed to be no other reason for taking Jayden to an abandoned barn in another town. After discovering she was pregnant, Jayden wanted to start a new life, but Blakely, accustomed to controlling every aspect of her life, refused to let her go. Furthermore, he had no desire to become a father. Jason's mother, Samantha Shrewsbury, advocated for the creation of a domestic violence registry. In an interview with Sky News, she expressed the following sentiments. "I don't want another mom to have to stand there and look at their daughter's body on a slab. I will never forget that until the day I die. For the year before Jayden was killed, I thought it was me he was targeting. I didn't expect it to be her. I really thought he wanted me out of the way. He could manipulate her. He could get money out of her. I remember him coming around one day after he'd spat at her the day before and punched her in the face." The jury deliberated for 20 hours, finding Ben Blakely guilty of intentionally taking Jayden Parkinson's life. The judge told him on December 3rd, "You took Jayden Parkinson, a complicated but loving and vulnerable 17-year-old girl, into open countryside near Upton in the dark of an early winter's evening. You murdered her by strangulation." The judge added that Blakely's treatment involved physical and emotional abuse, dominating and controlling her daily life, removing her phone, and even forbidding her from using the toilet at the hostel. Jake Blakely received 3 years for perverting the course of justice, and Ben Blakely was sentenced to life with a minimum of 20 years in prison.